This is the confidence we have in approaching God, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have what we asked of him. A wonderful promise here in 1 John 5, verses 14 and 15. The issue that comes up, though, is what does it mean to ask according to God's will? Because that is the condition here. If we ask according to his will, it's not an unconditional promise of God giving us whatever we ask. It says if we ask according to his will. Now, I could go into a long theological, what does that mean? But I'd rather give an example from my life. Let you ponder the question of what does it mean to ask according to God's will? In order to make this story make some sense, it goes back a number of decades. You need to understand two very separate threads in my life. The one is that I've always had a desire to travel, to see new places. And as a Christian, I wanted to be a missionary and travel around and go many places. And so I had that desire. And there were some places I wanted to go more than others. And I very much particularly desired to go to Nepal. I did get a chance to go to India in the 80s and in the early 90s. But I never got to Nepal in that era. And I read about it, the Himalaya mountains, how this tiny mountain kingdom that divides India from China, the high mountains, the narrow trails. I'd seen the pictures. It's beautiful. So that's a little background to understand where I was coming from. But after that era of my life, when I had a couple of opportunities, it seemed that every possibility of foreign mission work just dried up. And finally, I got to the point in the 90s where I kind of resigned myself. I will just be a householder. I guess that's God's plan for my life. Just go to church, maintain my house, my ordinary way of living. And so I was doing that. And then another thing was starting to happen. It seems quite unrelated. In our church, our little church, there was one lady who ran the nursery, and she did it year after year after year after year after year. And then she said, I've done this long enough. I need somebody to take my place. And there were no volunteers. And this went on for several months. She would bring it up again. I need somebody to take my place. I can't keep doing this. And there were no volunteers. And so finally I said, after months and months, I said, well, if nobody else will do it, I'll do it. And they went, what? What? A man running a nursery? What? Okay, fine. Find somebody else. That's good. They didn't find anybody else. I said, well, nobody else will do it. I'll do it. And they go, what? What? What do you mean, man running a nursery? Just went around a couple of times. And finally, I ended up running the nursery. Did this for a number of months. So here I was, man running the church nursery. So one day, one Sunday morning, there's a new family in church, and they have a brand new little baby. And I'm holding the little baby, and I feel like I should pray for this baby. So I take little Ayla in my arms, and I'm praying for her. And I'm going, God, how shall I pray for this little baby? And I thought that God was saying, you need to pray for her ministry in Nepal. And I'm going, right. So I started praying out, and I'm thinking, this can't be from God. This cannot be according to God's will. This has got to be projection. Me being frustrated that I'm not a missionary in Nepal, wanting to project that onto somebody else. And so I had all these reasons why it was not from God. And I was thinking, I don't know if it's from God or not. So I will pray for this little baby's mission in Nepal. So I'm praying for this little baby's ministry in Nepal. And God says, pray for her feet. There is a scripture that says, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring the message of good news. So I undo the blanket a little bit, take those little tootsies in my hand, and I pray for those feet. And as I prayed, I could see the mountain trails of Nepal. There's narrow little threads along the cliff side of the mountain. I could even see the moss between the rocks on the trail as I prayed for her feet on the mountain trails of Nepal. That was a way out of there prayer. That was just out of it. And it was so far out of it, I never told anybody. So years passed. I watched from a distance, very much at a distance. This little girl grew up. Our family and her family were not close at all. And so, you'd see, she's in grade school and so on. And then eventually I moved away and years passed. Facebook came along. I was on Facebook and some of the people from that church were also on Facebook. And one day I get a friend request from Ayla, who's now a teenager. Well, I'll be polite and I'll take her friend request. So, that way I kept seeing the news of her life. And one day I saw that she was engaged. Okay. The usual worries. I hope he's a godly man. But then, she got married and finished, the education part that she was doing at the time. Her husband finished his education part. He got a wonderful job. Wonderful, just tremendous financial opportunities doing some kind of marketing in financial planning. And just a few months after they're married, they put up the announcement. They feel that God has called them to join YWAM. Now, YWAM, Youth with a Mission, is a wonderful Christian organization. They go all around the world doing evangelism, very radical programs of street evangelism. So I went, wow, that's incredible. And they said, well, we're doing it right away. We've been accepted. We put in our application. We've been accepted. In just a few weeks, we're going into the training program. So they dropped everything, dropped their jobs, dropped their education, dropped everything, went to YWAM. Okay. So I, would see the updates, and then they were asking us to pray because they had a event coming up, which was they don't get to choose where they go in the world. Through some mechanism, whether it's by lot or by prayer and elders working together, I don't know, YWAM tells them where they're being sent. So they were praying that they would be sent to the right place. Okay. So then the announcement was made, and Ayla and her husband were going to Nepal. Okay. So a few months later, they took the special training for that one, and then a few months later they went. She was in Kathmandu, the capital. I would see the videos they would put up of the YWAM teams on the mountain trails of Nepal. And her birthday came around, and I sent her a birthday cake from the best shop in Nepal. Actually, I didn't send her the cake. I sent her the picture of the cake from the best shop in Nepal. But I also shared the story of that prayer. And a couple days later, the earthquake hit Nepal, the big one. And God used Ayla and her husband to minister to the people of Nepal in the aftermath of that great earthquake. Now, judge for yourself. When I prayed over that little baby and her ministry in Nepal, Do you think I was praying in accordance with God's will? You see, the issue, I believe, is that the first criteria is we need to learn to listen to God, and then we speak to God. When we listen, we learn how to pray according to His will.